Beyond 3D.
Hello guys, welcome to this week's edition of Beyond 3D. It's a pleasure to be with you again. Matt here along with Clint. Clint, have you had a good week this week?
I've had a brilliant week, thanks Matt, and I'm really excited because we've got somebody special coming up tonight.
Yes, well I'll let you talk about that. You can introduce.
No.
That'd be really good.
Oh, what's going on in the world first?
Ooh, the world, yes. Well, I think a lot of people right now are, the political situation in the United States is revving up. And you hear all kinds of rumors swirling around, and it's been very interesting. The latest rumors on the side of the Republicans and what they're saying about the Democratic Party, in other words, what the Trump people are saying about Clinton, is the fact that Hillary Clinton is not very well. They're talking about the fact that she may have had some kind of epileptic or seizure of something like that, and a lot of people have shown videos where she is looking quite weird, shall we say.
Weird as in not herself?
Weird as in there could be something physically wrong with her.
Well, you know what it's like when you haven't seen somebody for a while,
Yep.
and then you catch up with them and they're not themselves.
Yes.
Or the biometrics and the way that they move and that is not conducive with what's locked in your own memory. Now, when you say that she's unwell, are you talking along the lines of people have noticed that she's not herself?
I think people are looking at her and analyzing every nuance, and what they're seeing is that there is something, they're saying that something is medically wrong there. It doesn't make sense, and they're hiding, or her people are hiding this fact.
Well, her husband's been unwell for a while, hasn't he?
Bill Clinton has not been well for a long time. He had a heart attack maybe, 7 or 8 years ago.
Now, was it you who told me that he has an alleged cocaine habit?
Absolutely.
Is that what pushed him into his heart attack, allegedly?
I think that, along with a few other things. But what happened was there was a video out, and they showed Bill Clinton. I've seen two videos, and you guys can look these up on YouTube, and I'll put one up on the Facebook page for tonight's show. When you look at him in the background, there's a person, I think it was in Tucson, Arizona, and there's a person talking there, and if you look at Bill in the background, all of a sudden watch his eyes, and then watch his whole facial expression. And it reminds me of somebody that is under some kind of hypnotic trance or an MK Ultra type kind of program, because it really is freaky looking.
When you say MK Ultra, that opens up a big can of worms.
It is. And then what they've done, and what a few people have done, is they've gone back in time and have looked at Bill Clinton, even when he was president in the White House, preparing to give a speech or something like that, and that same glazed, hypnotic, trance-like look is still in his eyes.
I have seen that clip before. Is that where he's sitting there
and a woman is doing the makeup? Yes,
that's
exactly.
Right. And he's not there.
He's not there, and this reminded me of that early video of him. I was just like, wow.
I have seen that. Let me see if I can find that, and we'll punch that up on the Facebook page.
Yeah, literally, it was amazing to watch. Now, with Hillary Clinton, there's a video going around that shows her talking to some reporters, and she's talking to a reporter directly in front of her, and then off to the side, another reporter chimes in and puts a microphone near her, and they show her reeling, and they're saying she's having a seizure. But to me, what it looked like was a person that reacted to being surprised by something coming out of their peripheral vision all of a sudden into view, and they just reel back from it, and then they gather themselves. But when you slow it down, it looks like, the eyes are going, this is going, then you get the people saying, oh, here come the demon eyes and everything like that. I don't necessarily agree with that, but if you look at the whole context of that video, that a lot of that is going around big time on YouTube, I think you'll find it's just a person that was in shock or surprised by a sound coming from outside of the periphery into the periphery.
She's a human being at the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
Allegedly.
Well, yeah, usually.
Allegedly.
They say she's a demon, but who knows? Anyway, guys, this is going to be an interesting show for you, and we have a very special guest, and I think you're going to really like what we're going to do here. So, Clint, I'll let you do the introduction.
No. He's hanging on the line, so let's just have a quick break and come straight back to him.
That's a great idea. We'll see you guys after the break.
Beyond
3D. Guys, it's once again a pleasure. What we're going to do is we're going to give you a Dr. Richard Miller 2.0. We had a fantastic time speaking with him last year, and we totally welcome him back to the show, to Beyond 3D this year. So, Richard, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to talk to you again.
Thank you. It's, we'll see if it's mutual.
How's life, Rick, in the Free State of Jefferson at the moment?
Well, you this is no longer the country I served and protected. You know, as a training for Navy SEALs, back in the 60s and early 70s, I was all American. I loved my country, and boy, have I had my eyes opened. And when I say that, I am discouraged and embarrassed for the disgrace we're currently offering for presidential candidates. It's embarrassing, and I don't know a single person that would endorse either of these individuals. Hillary Clinton, what she did in this last just 2 years is worse than the last woman they executed in the electric chair 10 years earlier. And Donald Trump is an egomaniac that would presume he's smarter than me because his values measure his quality of worth in terms of dollars. Money is a theatrical prop. It's not real. What's real is labor. And I have yet to see anything from that individual that would make me using him to vote against Clinton. It's like, where do you go from here? We've been hijacked.
Well, that's actually a very good point. Let me ask you a point, because this is, news-wise, I think it's top right over in the United States right now, the way Trump has been going back and forth with one of the people who served his country and died over in the Middle East.
You're talking about that Iranian. Yeah. Look, it has nothing to do with race, creed, or color, or not supposed to. And what we're talking about now is the Republican Party to be distinguished differently from the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was always constitutional. That means segregation and the belief in using slaves. That's where it started, and that's approximately the flavor that it currently has. Both are Republican and Democratic parties are in shambles, and all of these bureaucracies have secret lodges within them. And I'm candidly here to tell you they don't know goat turds from pork and beans in terms of Hermetic Kabbalism or Kabbalah. They have no clue of what they're talking about. I am a scholar in that area. I have studied Merkaba mysticism. I studied with Gershom Scholem for 6 years, did my own translations in the Bible, looking for answers. I didn't find them. What I did find were a lot of discrepancies that I'm now currently enjoying in our atmosphere of political correctness. It's nuts.
That's a great way of putting it. And now what we're starting to see, and I'll leave it at this, is we're starting to see a lot of the so-called hierarchy of the Republican Party starting to defect.
Well, where else can they go? I mean, the whole thing is in shambles.
Yeah, I agree. I thoroughly agree. It's just amazing what's going on over there.
And it's one of those things too, Richard, isn't it, where it's the lesser of two evils. I mean, there is no lesser of two evils between the two. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody wants to give Trump the keys to the nuclear weapons, and nobody trusts Hillary because she's so crooked.
Well, she's a criminal.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I've had security clearances, and I know what you're supposed to and what you're not supposed to do. She just tossed it off like her husband. And the problem is, when she is elected, because Trump is unelectable, in my opinion, basically what will happen next is she will appoint her husband head of the United Nations, and then Obama will probably be given a Supreme Court judge position. Probably.
We've said that for a long time now.
Absolutely. We've actually talked about that. Clint said the fix has been in for a very long time, and what you just stated is a more than likely scenario.
And so here we are at the end of days, and if you're to believe Zen Gardner, and I would hope he's correct, this won't matter shortly. But it matters right now, and the fact is that nothing that we're being told is real. The whole system is in shambles, and it's so bad, they don't even care if you can see through it.
What I don't understand, Richard, is I was thinking about it this morning and tonight. It's like you work for a company and you might be the head maintenance guy and you're constantly reporting to the company of what needs to be maintained and what needs to be fixed, but nobody's doing anything about it. And it's like nobody will address anything what's wrong with the world until the entire system collapses.
We're not as bad as Mexico and their cartels. Actually, the criminals exist on a local level. It starts in the local level with Sheriff Bubba and goes on downhill and into a black hole from there. Most congressmen, Nick Begich is a personal friend of mine, and his younger brother is a senator, a junior senator from the state of Alaska, and he almost didn't run because of the BS that he encountered there. And the problem is, there's nothing any of us can really do about it. It's like we have been hijacked by a bunch of criminals, and the United States is about to go into war with Russia that I have no desire at all to do. Putin is possibly one of the smartest people out there. When he got in front of the United Nations and said, if you want to come to Russia and speak and be a Russian, you speak Russian. Now, what has happened to Esperanto and the idea of having a cross language for all the South American countries, plural, not Mexico, and Spanish? Now, I have to tell you, the Common Core is such an embarrassment that a number of my Navy SEALs now are doing agricultural movements with individual cities and countries called Common Ground, where children are taught how to farm right out of the gate and mentor each other, and then your master gardener is simply a facilitator. And this idea of somehow making us all even and the same is crazy. Our natural resource is the diversity in our children. And when you talk about a child that has Down syndrome, there's nothing wrong with that child. That child is about to give you a lesson in love that you can't even get from a dog. So, I've watched autistic children. I'm a functioning savant. I hum and I nod and I bob and I, talk to myself and all of that. But I'm functioning. And I have watched savants or what we call autistic children capable of making better bedding plants than a master gardener. Now, how does that work? Well, children right out of the gate are oriented toward the sandbox as a metaphor. And so, for me, the first thing a child should be taught is how to check the cleanliness of water. Once they do that, they can show an adult how to do it, because adults don't know how to do it. And that's probably the first thing everybody should be learning how to do.
Richard, how's the Caterpillar bus going?
That's what we're talking about, the Caterpillar project. It's installed. Right now, I haven't had the time to write up the laboratory equipment that I would need for small children to be able to test their own water. That is what the Caterpillar is about. It's part of Pacifica Gardens and the old Steve Miller farm. I have some people inside that are really good friends of mine trying to get that to go. Basically, we're going to need a patron to buy some minor laboratory equipment so that we have a traveling water testing laboratory that children teach other children, and those children then teach adults. In other words, third graders would be running it, teaching first graders how to do it, and first graders would then be showing their parents how they do it.
It's pretty much the only way forward now, isn't it, Richard? Considering that the whole system's hijacked.
Most people don't have a clue about drinking water and actually have worms. We're the United States, for example, is one of the only countries in the world that doesn't have some kind of deworming process. Even just drinking absinthe would help.
Absolutely, especially with all the fluoride in the water these days as well.
Yeah, all your municipal waters have H. pylori and other creepy things in it that they have, somehow missed or failed in their protocols to get, and everybody is sick from municipal water. You can taste the chlorine. It's terrible.
Beyond 3 D.
We've had a lot of chemtrails happening over where we live here in the Mornington Peninsula as well, and a lot of that stuff falls into the local dams.
Chemtrails. Don't get me started.
I'm starting you, Richard. I'm starting you. I'm winding you up, and I'm letting you go.
Yeah, listen, man. I'm so... okay, we didn't know where our chemtrail aircraft were coming from, so a couple of my vets went down and tracked it down. We found they were coming out of Canada up in Chilliwack in BC as a United Nations project coming down and returning down near Klamath Falls. We have not had chemtrails in the last week. I don't know why. However, last year when I prepared a talk on it with Wigington and some others, I had discovered or identified 28 different aerosols that they were using. Different ways they were deploying the aerosols so that the public wouldn't notice them, one thing from another. And recently, as of a couple of weeks ago, they deployed lithium and all through Southern Oregon. They did a test last year in Reedsport. I was sent in to actually vet the illnesses that were accountable from that and the ability to lock down a small city. You can identify lithium by the way it pearls off the chemtrail rather than spreading out like normal chemtrails do. This one will pearl in little wisps, and that's the way lithium deploys when it's in a nanometer format. And here's the bad news. Your whole recycling program for used aluminum cans are all being used for chemtrail use right now. None of that is being recycled, as they would indicate that that's what the project is all about. The whole thing is a big series of what we call false flags, one covering another. And to actually vet with reasons why they're doing it, I can't even imagine. I can tell you this, everybody, and it's a genome specific. It attacks certain genomes, have what's called the chemtrail cough. My friend Vincent Finelli got the cough so bad he created a hernia and then got pneumonia. Everybody, including you, I'm guessing, is now waking up every morning with cotton mouth because of dehydration. It is micro-dehydrating everything, and you can look at the trees down here in Southern Oregon, and they're all suffering. Every single ponderosa has some slight damage to it because of this chemtrail nonsense. And there's no disclosure. They just presume it's for our own good. Well, imagine that.
We have a lot of people that are very ignorant, and you point out to them, oh look, there's a chemtrail in the sky, and they want to identify it as a contrail, as just a jet stream coming off a plane, and to go through the effort of trying to explain to them that's not what you're looking at is so laboursome.
Your finest laboratory is your mouth and your smell. You can accurately, like a farmer, go out into the field and taste when the alfalfa is ready for baling. You can taste it. You can put it in your mouth and you can taste it. Now, that is how you do chemtrails. That's how I approached the 28 different kinds of aerosols that were being deployed. And when you start to identify how that salt or metal goes into the atmosphere in a nanometer form, now you can actually have some visuals like lithium will pearl. It has to do with the molecule and the way it hits water molecules in the air. I don't know any of this. I'm just another person trying to connect dots. And what I'm connecting is creepy.
Tell us what's creepy, Richard, because, and I mean that...
You mean turning us into, I don't know, bio APIs, there you go. Turning us into laptops. That's a good way to put it.
Well, that's kind of factual these days. The other thing that's going on, I just saw it in the U.S., chemtrails lead to different things going on. One of them is the weather patterns. We are having some absolutely phenomenal weather patterns down here, quite out of season. It is wintertime in Australia, but this has been a particularly brisk, cold, wet, wild, and woolly one, and I just saw what happened in Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore is just the least of it. Look what I posted on Facebook this morning. You can get to my Facebook page at docram.com, docram.com. And let me tell you, the Earth has actually now experience and enjoying a 3% orbital change already. Something is affecting our orbit and is causing these extreme weathers. And my guess is before the end of next year, the United States, I don't know about Australia, will be experiencing temperatures like Iraq and Iran that recorded 167 degrees Fahrenheit this year. And we're out past Venus and we're out past Mars. We're going to have both of their quality of weather.
When that happens, Richard, society just falls apart, doesn't it?
Well, animals can't survive it. Man may be able to by keeping more hydrated than you might be comfortable with. That's how you're going to have to start playing it now, giving everything a little bit more water than what normally would have been, because at least 20% of it is not reaching delivery.
Would I be right in saying that America doesn't have the infrastructure to support that demand of water?
Well, there's already, if you look at this morning's posts, we're on fire on the West Coast. Everything's burning up.
That's a fact. I see. Yeah, amazing.
I mean, there it is. There's a picture of it showing it's a graphic description of each fire and where it is, and the West Coast is burning up. And while our weather isn't as bad as it was last year was the worst year in recorded history. How does that work? We're talking about temperatures that are approaching Venus and Mars. And Mars is 100 below Fahrenheit, and Venus is up over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And here we go. We were 167 in Iran, and Baltimore is just typical of the abnormal anomalies we're going to start seeing everywhere. There are going to be animals that die, from fish die-off to the red algae that are now taking over our Great Lakes. The oceans are already showing changes in their biosphere because of the algae.
Richard, a lot of people don't realise that the algae are what give us oxygen, isn't it?
Well, they're one of the sources, yes. I mean, you have your timber and your forest, but yes, they're one of the parts of the lung, which we call the lung for the voice of the planet. The Earth can be seen as a living entity. It has mycorrhizae, which is a network, a quantum computation network that's more highly evolved even than some of our brain patterns. She's a forester working at the University of British Columbia that talks about the mother tree, like in Avatar, in the forest, and the network it uses in communicating when there's going to be a fire or a flood. The Earth is conscious from a Turing point of view if you consider the algorithms formed by mycorrhizae. This is a network of organisms in communicating up and down the chain and moving information in a hologram. And I have to tell you that there's things going on. We don't even have a clue yet. And here we are at the end of days. And so, how do you play this? How do you prepare for something that's unpreparable? Like throwing a bunch of billiard balls down on a billiard table and trying to figure out who's going to hit what.
You get yourself organised and you organise a sustainable lifeboat.
Well, I'm finding that for me, my most important tool in my toolbox is my attitude.
Wonderful.
Well, that's the place where you start, not water or how deep you're in the bunker. Because if you read Greg Bear and his science fiction stories, Epoch and Aeon, in that, with the pole shifts that we're currently enjoying, the Inuit et al. Are saying we now have a 23-degree shift in our literal axis. Now, that alone is going to affect the weather, and then when you add on to that the anomalies coming from the sun and something that is affecting the sun, what would affect the sun? Another sun. And that's because it has been stated clearly that most all star systems now are binary. And if you can figure out that part, you can realize that's probably why you have two brains and why you have a past and a future and only the moment. And so we have something else going on here, and we don't really have the tools. Physics is inequipped to address these problems. I have recently been writing on the nature of time and the time travel and the ability to move backward and forward in time, and I made a discovery. And it's not very interesting in that sense of what we have now is an opportunity. Nothing to be feared of, but we are literally at the end of days, and at some point you are going to be offered a choice, just like in the Bible. And your decision will determine what happens next.
Beyond.
3.
D.
You can't. I'm sorry, I can't refute any of that. It's just about the. That's just the way it goes. I'm trying to remember. I just was talking to a couple of amateur astronomers, and they're talking about the fact that Mars is out of place.
Well, everything has been moved because of this entry of our second binary. Stanford came out last year and said, there it is, out there past the Oort cloud. And it has a solar system with planets around it. And one of the planets has just entered our solar system and is near Neptune. That's why it's causing the perturbation in Neptune and Mars's orbits. Now, our orbit is being affected because of the sun. And there's only one thing that will affect the orbit and behavior of our sun, and that's another sun. We're a binary. Just like in the center of each galaxy, there's a black hole, and it opens to a white hole. And if you actually look at CERN and some of the experiments that they did prior to creating the singulate, they actually tried to create a Big Bang scenario. And guess what happened? They created a second universe in reverse as a reflected wave or cavitation.
Wow, that's incredible, Richard.
Well, that leads to the idea of now I have a physics description of what happens at the moment of death. It does not mean I'm right, but it's a physics explanation of it. And last year, 2 years ago, I spent 2 weeks in the jungles with Eben Alexander, and I have previously studied with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And so I have my own ideas of what death is and what it is not. It is not the end of things. It is basically what I told my little girl when she died in my arms. She wanted to know what was going to happen, and I told her, I don't really know, but basically my guess is that she was going to be very pissed that she woke up before I did.
Interesting.
Well, it's not about death is the end of things. It is the end of this hallucination where we are at the bottom end of consciousness. Imagine Nibiru, this star, may be our future as a cavitation process. And the reason I would even mention it like that is the fact that Stanford has admitted that there were some infrared signature characteristics that were uncharacteristic of a brown dwarf. What would that suggest? Well, one explanation might be that it's a Dyson sphere with a very high technology where your future is about to measure with your past.
Well, energy can't be destroyed, can it?
Well, that's one assumption. How about in a closed system? But what about an open system? One where you had a multiverse and possibilities. That is the whole concept of the Casimir effect and the idea of adventures in time travel. That's the last chapter, by the way, in my new manuscript, The Non-Local Mind. Rock the Casimir or Adventures in Time Travel. It's basically, I've got a sense of exactly what happened. And basically, your future is going back into childhood. But you're not doing it as a child. You're doing it as a cavitation process. And this epoch happens to be the trial by fire.
Do you think CERN has much to do with that, Richard?
Well, no. CERN is trying to determine what's going to happen. and are creating creepy things that may or not change timelines. Stay tuned on that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I have suspicions. I'm not concerned. I think I've got mastery of myself enough that I'm not concerned about that part.
I'm more interested in, Richard, the fact that when they had the great reveal and they had the opening of CERN, all the black magic rituals that took place before.
Oh, yeah, that's like the Republican Party. Good luck with that. They were engineers. They weren't scientists, okay? That's the first thing that made me feel okay about it. Number two, ghost dance doesn't work quite like that, so good luck with that. I have actually studied Merkaba mysticism and understand what Gurdjieff and others were trying to talk about regarding whirling dervish and how space and time are changed with movement and dance. If you want to go further in that study, start with Gabriel Roth, and then her teacher, or earlier than her, was Kate Bush. And before Kate Bush was Kenneth Anger and the Magic Lantern series. Now, magic and the use of sound and movement or dance has been in previous technologies and epochs, and I have, for the military, actually studied some of that. And that has valid. There is the so-called capstones that go on top of the pyramids that supposedly will work with sound and resonance. But I don't know.
I think it's interesting, Richard, with sound. There was a story that came out the other day that a 528 hertz sound was used to clean oil-polluted water off the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, water is just one set of simple experiments. It's unbelievable that I was hired by Jerry Pollack back in 1970 to work anesthesiology with the boys from Brazil. Isn't that interesting? And that Jerry's laboratories have been summarily closed down since the release of his book, The Fourth Phase of Water. I have watched Rustum Roy and others. Right now, Mark Leclerc is the primary scientist at MIT doing the studies on cavitation. And water is the least of it using sound. And if you actually go back to the Colburn Bible and some of the older Bibles, the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, deals with sound and its relationship to words.
Well, that comes down, Matt, to what I was talking about last year with the word abracadabra, which is I speak it and therefore it becomes life. So with words and vibration and sonic frequencies and stuff like that, that's really at the essence of when you can create with thought and with sound, and when you speak it, it becomes a reality.
Well, yeah, that's why man has responsibilities for the words that come out of his mouth, not just the thoughts he chooses to entertain. The ones he chooses to entertain, his thoughts, structure the water in his body. That's how psyche enters matter. And so, that's a chapter, the second to the last chapter in my non-local mind book. And the one before that is on the structure and memory in water. Listen, the sound and movement do everything in space-time, because that is space-time.
It has a dramatic effect. One of my teachers from the Philippines, before he left the planet, we were discussing vibrational frequencies and sound, and he didn't want to go into it too much because he said he was karmically bound. If he gave out certain information, it karmically could affect him if the wrong people.
Well, the words of God, to say God's name, Yad-Heh-Vah-Heh, and what that does over Yahweh. See, they're different. Just like the veils of Isis would suggest that everybody has got to serve somebody. Little Bob Dylan never heard anything.
Yeah, it's a fascinating study. I think sound is the cutting edge as far as everything is going. And what I remember, Richard, was I used to be in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, and the organist would come to do a rehearsal, and you heard him play certain notes, but when he got to the bass pedals and he would start playing, you felt the note before you heard anything. The building.
Well, that's synesthesia. That's where you have a cross-modal translation in your senses. And
that's the thing I remember the most about it: the vibration you hear and feel before your ears can pick up anything. Your body has a resonance.
Well, it's affecting the water in your body. It's
Absolutely.
actually structuring it just like your thoughts do.
Do you think, Richard, that DARPA is all over these kind of science, basic technology?
Oh, DARPA. Weapons. Yeah, well, good luck with that. That's Eisenhower. Beware of the military complex. Yeah, that's what happened in Turkey. Didn't work. That's what's going to happen probably in the United States. I'm very concerned. I think the United States is going to be Venezuela in 2 years.
That soon?
That would be a very quick turnabout.
Well, it's going to happen because that's what's happening with corporate farming. It's not working. Mm-hmm. And now the GMOs are in everything. And when you have an organic tampon that has Roundup in it, how does that work? Glyphosate.
Ouch.
Gee.
Well, yeah, it's causing problems in women.
Oh, my.
Menstrual period and all, yeah.
Wow. Didn't think of it from that aspect of it, how it can affect. Well,
It's
this
in
is what they're
everything.
doing.
Yeah. Anything that you can buy that says organic will probably now be found with nanometer particles of glyphosate. It's in everything.
Incredible.
That's your better living through chemistry. And there it is.
Thank you, Monsanto.
Well, Monsanto originally was a weapons company. They started with sweeteners and basically then made Agent Orange, 2,4-D, and Paraquat under old man DuPont. Now, then they got briefly into seed control, and now they're into the chemistry of the earth, and it's in everything. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bunch of aliens terraforming Earth right in front of our eyes.
Richard, it's funny you say that because quite often when I'm looking at a chemtrail, I'm thinking to myself, why is our atmosphere being changed the way it is?
Well, anything that you could possibly imagine is not only true, it's that and even more. Because that is the only thing that's real, is your imagination.
Well, I can totally agree with that, Richard. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break here on Beyond 3D, and we will return with Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Beyond 3D.
Yeah, Richard, for us it's what I'm looking at and what Clint is looking at, and I'm just looking at the world right now, Richard. I'm just I am amazed, and I'm just like,
suck. And that's why people like Zen Gardner are trying to tell you, they're already on the run. Well, of course they are. Where are the 1%ers going to hide?
Well, this is the whole thing. They're talking about all these guys from the U.S. are now coming to New Zealand. They can't hide anywhere.
Well, no, of course not. And so it is, the mad feeding the mad. They're all sick. And they don't get it. I went down to L.A. and just for a brief visit to Hollywood. Good God, I couldn't possibly live there. And the people there are all sick. They're nuts. They have no idea how they're living or what kind of health they're in because of their lifestyle.
Would I be right in thinking, Richard, that their environment is so distracting that they're not even aware of what's going on anymore?
Well, they've been programmed not to.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. It's about the school system. It's about the education system. Now, I was born in the early '60s, so Richard, I understand what you're talking about.
Well, I was born in the '40s.
Yeah.
So and I know that when I was in grade school, they taught me Latin.
Well, this was the thing. I caught Latin as well now, but I also remember this, and I thought this was really interesting because as a Catholic, I was like, okay, we're supposed to get to high school, you're going to learn Latin, you're going to learn the basis of 4 other languages, and what do? They say in our sophomore year, oh, forget it, we've declared Latin a dead language, can't be bothered anymore, that's it.
It's crazy since that happens to be what all your genus and species are named after with nomenclature.
Mm-hmm. Instead of bringing people together under one common tongue, they separate. Everybody do it
that's the whole idea of compartmentalize so that you don't know what the other part is doing.
That's exactly right. So, yeah, Los Angeles, it's very funny. So, we felt that way about Los Angeles. We were living in San Francisco, and we would, go down there for a weekend or something, hang out, and say there's no possible way we could live there either and just get the heck out of there as fast as we could.
Well, it's just about values. spending money. Money isn't even real. It's a theatrical prop. What's real is when you do something, labor. That's real. Like right now, me doing a talk with you. That's real.
Yep. But this is the thing with the whole money aspect of it, and everybody says, buy gold, buy this, buy that. The fact of the matter is, if you allow government control, all of that stuff is a moot point.
The only thing that silver is good for is a bioremediating for working as an antibiotic substitute with colloidal silver.
Yep, exactly.
Keep a little bit of silver in your go bag, but that's basically as an antibiotic, not because it's going to buy your way out of a horde of zombies.
Exactly. So that's the whole point. But even if you were to think of fiat currency as the way or anything like that, I always look at Zimbabwe and the fact that the money had an expiry date on it. And after that date, it was no longer good and they could issue new currency. So currency is an absolute fallacy. It's a farce.
Well, the whole thing started with Rothschild. This is about 400 years in the making.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's when the alien contact happened.
We can look at it that way because the fact of the matter is, being that photography wasn't around 400 years ago per se, or at least that we know of, you could say that, a lot of things happened. And there is a lot of talk about now all of these old pictures from the Italian masters that are showing little things, dots in the sky, that people are making out to be sort of unidentified objects and things like that.
Well, and, Crowley and his eyewash, whatever. That, I can tell you the intellectual crowd, you guys, are about 20 years ahead of the Church of Rome and or other people that will give disclosure to the hordes.
And
that's the way it works.
We can't wait till that happens either.
Yeah, well, stay tuned, buddy.
What do you think about Hillary coming out and talking about trying to do her best to do some disclosure?
She's a liar.
Of course.
She's always lied. Nothing that she says is true, so you can presume whatever she says is going to not be held accountable.
No, of course not.
Yeah, the political aspect of the United States right now, it's just a wash.
Terrible. Our country has been hijacked, and most of it, you should have seen the look on my father's face when he realized he was no longer a Republican. He shot himself.
Amazing. Absolutely
well, it happened.
Amazing.
Literally, Richard, did it?
I'm sorry?
Did that actually happen literally?
No, Mike, what do you mean?
What, your father shot himself?
Oh, he was in pain. He was part of the Neptune Club, and they weren't moving fast enough. He'd had enough.
Okay.
The Neptune
My dad has balls that I couldn't do. I didn't mean I agree with him, but he is my father, and I have to respect him.
Fair enough.
He was in pain. I have been in pain. I know how crazy that can make one.
Yep.
So, well, I love my dad. He was 87, had a good life. After Mom died, I thought he was going to kill himself, and he met another woman and had 13 years of a good run. So I'm pleased and happy for my dad.
Absolutely. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Respect. Honor honor the good.
Well, yeah. It doesn't mean I'm going to do what he did.
Right.
But doesn't mean I don't respect him for it.
You're just on a different path, Richard.
Well, is he?
Well, of course he is. Everyone's on their own path.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yes, in fact, that's probably correct. My guess is there are as many religions as there are human beings, ultimately.
And it's crazy, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, religion at its core is supposed to be all about love.
Well, good luck with that. Rome and their last pope, I don't think that had to do with love. And actually, there are 4 words for love in the Greek, which had a higher social technologies than we did, with eros, philo, agape, and telema. Thelema was the love of will, your purpose. And there is a distinction between purpose and intent. Intent is what happens at the end of the day. That is called the Stanford argument. And the distinction between what Ducky Mallard called the ethical and the moral man. What is the difference between an ethical man and a moral man? And Mallard in the NCIS replied, a ethical man knows not to cheat on his wife. A moral man won't.
Well, that's like the difference between genius and insanity, isn't it? Genius is knowing how to build an atomic bomb. Insanity is actually doing it.
There you go. The metaphor of all things is always in metaphor. And that was Gregory Bateson. What is your metaphor? But to serve your paradox. And so I have a pair of ox out in my field. Yeah, now you're getting the big picture.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm causing you to stretch a little bit. I want you to open up your imaginations and think for yourself. And that is called pathworking, where you're actually listening to your inner voice. That inner voice is a timeline, a specific timeline in the future, trying to direct this nonsense at the moment.
You're absolutely spot on, Richard. You are absolutely spot on when you say that.
It is when you look at things in front of you and one thing stands out over the other five, that is how your future is speaking to you.
And when you take that leap, that's dart, isn't it?
Well, synchronicity is more than that, and one of the algorithms used in artificial intelligence. But the most important thing to remember is that a computer does not feel pleasure when it beats you in chess.
Wow.
Good point.
Excellent point.
Very good point indeed.
And you come back to that again, Richard, about the whole thing being like a simulation too.
Well, we have software now that will predict an event before it happens, just like in the movie Minority Report. J2.0 software is now used in New York City to predict crimes in boroughs 28 minutes before they occur.
What's the accuracy on that?
75%.
Wow.
And with Cliff High and his infobots and some of the other algorithms that are being used with Clifford and On's algebra, some of the other algebras, we have gotten to a place where a computer is persons of interest. It's way, way down the line in terms of smartness. However, smartness is not the whole thing. There's other resonances of emotions and how you feel about something. And on the fourth level, it's archetypal. And that's what distinguishes man from a machine, where I am you, and you are me, and I am the walrus.
And getting back to using your instincts too.
Instinct is the future, not your past.
Well, that's how you trained a lot of the Navy SEALs, wasn't it, to get in touch
Yes, I
with...
tried to use thinking with the gut, something that was outside space-time that gave you a higher probability of survival. That's what defined a super soldier in the early years. They were above statistical inference. You couldn't predict because they were no longer working with intent. They were working with purpose. And when you use beliefs like you would a pair of clothing, as not God-given, but, an arbitrary tool that has its purpose, now you make a distinction between purpose and intent. And that's the difference between you and a machine.
Richard, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight on Beyond 3D. We have waited 12 months to bring you back to our listeners. We have been inundated with contact from people all around Australia and around the world wanting more of Richard Alan Miller, and we are so pleased to bring you tonight to the world.
I'm always available to help you do this. This is how I sell books and become not a starving artist. I have right now 9 volumes of the Encyclopedia of Alternative Agriculture currently being uploaded for sale, and I have a brand new ebook that will be coming out right behind that called The Small Family Farm for the 21st Century.
And if anybody would like to purchase one of Richard's amazing books, jump on richardalanmiller.com or look him up as Doc Ram.
At Facebook, yeah.
At Facebook, yeah. Thank you very much for your time tonight, Richard. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Look forward to speaking to you next week. That'd be great.
Okay, next week, if you'd like to play again, send me an email. We'll set it up.
Thanks, Richard.
My pleasure.
Beyond 3D.
Well, folks, that, in my opinion, was fantastic information, and we are really looking forward to next week where Dr. Richard Miller will be back with us again. It'll be an absolute blast to spend some more time and really wax philosophic about what's going on around the world these days.
And if anybody has a question or anybody wants to know anything extra that we didn't cover, please contact us on our Facebook page, which is Beyond3-D at Facebook.
And what we'll do is we'll collate those questions and we can talk to Dr. Miller and we will ask him those specific questions going into next week and the weeks beyond, because we want to make it a more permanent sort of a situation. But the other thing that's going on right now that I think is very important, Clint, is this is one of the things I really love, and I've loved this since I was a kid. I've always loved the Olympics.
Well, it's the benchmark of the potential of a human being, isn't it?
I think so. And politically, you see how all the countries vie for positions and try to do things like that. I was watching a fantastic documentary, Clint, on what was going on with the IOC, the Olympic Organizing Committee, back in the 1930s, around what was going on with Nazi Germany. And it was really interesting to see exactly how they would maneuver and try to position themselves, because they knew that Hitler was going to put on the biggest Olympics. And they say now the Olympics of the modern era were shaped by what happened in 1936 in Berlin. Enlighten
everybody, Matt.
Well, basically what went on was this. The IOC, or the Olympic Committee, had decided that they were going to award the Olympics to Berlin in 1936, to Germany. Hitler wanted to prove...
hang on a sec. Do you think that was to sort of diffuse a little bit of what was going on with the war at the time?
I think it was a diversion, a little bit of diffusing, but it was also what it turned out to be was showing just how certain people who wanted positions of power would do just about anything for that power, including sell out human beings just to get their agenda across. And
because that's never happened in the history of the world ever before, has it?
Oh, no, not at all. But basically what happened was the Nazi Party came up and they decided that there would not be any Jews whatsoever on the German Olympic team. And the IOC said, well, that's really not a very nice thing. We don't want something like that. That would not go well around the world. Then they came out and they said that they didn't want any blacks coming to the Olympics from anywhere. And they brought up something I thought was very interesting. They said that their Aryan nation, if they were to run against any blacks from whether it be the United States or from Africa, they brought up x-rays showing the foot bones of blacks and of Aryans, and they said if you look, the blacks have an advantage. They run like gazelles. We wouldn't be able to beat them. They're more animalistic than we could possibly be. You got a lot of interesting stuff going on back there. It was amazing.
I think it's more of a case of face. Could you imagine if the Aryan nation, if a German Olympic competitor was beaten in any event by a Jew or a black person of origin, what does that say about the Aryan nation?
Well, if we get into this totally, we're going to have to get into UFOs and what the Aryans were originally and supposedly. But anyway, what it basically came down with, Hitler acquiesced and he basically allowed anybody to come to this. He decided, he went around and saw what they were building as a village and said it was too small, so he made it on that grander scale. And ever since that point in time, the Olympics it's always been a can you top this? The opening ceremony is an absolute spectacular now, and a lot of people worldwide look forward to it. And so in Rio, I can just about guarantee you they will really do a fantastic job of it.
I know for a fact that the US has committed over 1,000 spies to protect the Rio Olympics from any kind of terrorist attack.
Yeah, well, the United States had to protect their slaves to make sure if they win gold medals, they pay their tax, which is about $9,500 and some odd dollars per gold medal you win. Loads of fun over there, but that's neither here nor there. What it comes down to, it's a great situation. Well, what you have to remember is this is we all love it. I mean, I love watching the Olympics. I love watching the fact that countries are competing against each other, but there's a camaraderie. And I love when you watch the closing ceremonies that all of a sudden you have people swapping jackets, swapping pins. Everybody's had a really great time. And it just brings the world together as opposed to separating the world. Even though it's different countries, the people come together under sport and they try to celebrate something. So it's fantastic.
All I care about is that a false flag event does not happen and that we have a clean, safe Olympics for everybody.
Absolutely. And the thing, it's interesting how the last one was, like 1972 in Munich?
Yeah, well, I say that because, the CIA and the NSA have contributed, like I said, 1,000 spies, which are all set up through the Olympic Village. When they're pulling those kind of strings and making that kind of a commitment to something, you have to ask why.
Well, you have to ask why, because if you notice what's going on in the world right now, it doesn't have to be an ISIS or an ISIL or anything like that. It can be a person who's sympathetic to them and they decide, I'm going to try something. And you have to be wary of that. If it comes to the NSA, just like with Hillary Clinton's emails, which they have every single one of those 30,000 emails, they already have all that data, they'll be able to get what they want. If nothing is supposed to happen there, if they want nothing to happen, nothing will happen. They can put the people in place to make sure it is safe. If they're looking for a false flag for some reason, then again, something will happen. So you have to be wary of that as well. But I personally believe, being that the Olympics are there, I am really hoping that it shows Rio de Janeiro to be the city that it is, which is an absolutely gorgeous city. Even for me, the favelas, the dirty areas, when you look at the character of some of the people there, it's just a fantastic space.
Let's touch wood and hope that nothing does happen anyway.
All we can say is that, and hopefully have a really great time and everybody enjoys watching it, because I know I will. And hopefully Australia does very well.
And everybody else in the world too. And Matt, that's all we have time for this week.
That's fantastic.
I hope everybody enjoyed Dr. Richard A. Miller, and we will get him back next week.
Absolutely, it'll be a lot of fun. So you guys take great care, and we will catch you next week for another edition of Beyond 3D.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.